So the entire universe has to fit within 1/3 of what mainstream science says of the solar system.
In this episode of Coffee with Chad, we're going to talk about Einstein, E equals MC squared, science, the modern scientific stuff we're taught. Is it wrong? Let's find out. Hey everybody, I'm Chad Taylor, author of the book, Where Are We? Earth According to the Bible. That's probably how most people know me. Today we have as our guest Erik Shimandle. Now, Erik contacted me a week or two ago on the subject of Earth, space, but coming at it from a scientific standpoint. I get accused all the time of, well, Chad, the Bible is not a scientific book, therefore, blah, 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 blah. I get that crap all the time. Now, Erik is coming at things from a scientific standpoint and wanted to talk numbers and science and all that kind of stuff about where things are not lining up with what we're taught. You mean to say that it's possible that Einstein's theories were wrong? Well, let's find out. I don't know about Erik. I don't know a whole lot about him, but I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say about the subject of science and how modern science is, with relation to Earth and where we are and that whole subject. And so from my background, and like I said, this first chat I've had with Erik, so I'm looking forward to this, is from my background is there is a theoretical overarching religion called science, is how I see this, where there's all these theory of evolution, the Big Bang theory, even gravity today is taught, it's a theory still technically what causes gravity, but it's taught as a fact, and so on and so forth, to where when true science contradicts this theoretical science, the people that are actually doing true science get squashed, and anything that interferes with the overarching theoretical science. That's how I see things. And so anyway, I don't know where Erik stands with all this. I'm looking forward to hearing what his stance is, and definitely coming at things from a different angle. I have a high school education from Montana. I like to say simple-minded, and so a lot of the stuff that I've heard of, through texting has said is definitely over my head, but I really want to hear what Erik has to say. So Erik, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Chad. And let's give you a little kind of background, I suppose. I didn't really go beyond high school that much. I mean, I got first year of college done, but I actually dropped out because they wouldn't give me any time off to start a restaurant. And so anyway, in high school, my psychology teacher actually had us take a IQ test. And I scored 148. And mind you, I never actually took any books home to study because I had to cut firewood all the time. So I passed, I think, high school with an average of 3.2 grade point average, which wasn't bad, but I know I could have done a whole lot better. And so I've studied science and math. Well, math and science in school really big. Those were my top two things. Okay, and I actually scored in the top 2% of the nation for math because I got a perfect score, in the top 5% in the nation for science because I got a perfect score. Now, science is a little bit easier in math. Also, the guy who corrected a guy with a PhD on a formula he put on the board and got cussed out in front of the class for it. And that was my high school experience. So.
Wow. So you corrected somebody on the subject, and he got in trouble for something?
Yeah, I got in trouble. He cussed at me, it just goes to show that people let their ego get in the way of something that's true. And he later apologized because he was like, if you're so effing smart, why don't you come up here and fix it? So I went up there and I fixed it. And he's like, well, I guess if I have any questions, I know who to ask.
Wow. Yeah. And that goes to show modern schooling too. It's generally schooling. It's you don't ask questions, you do what you're told, and you memorize the answers, and you're not taught, from my experience, you're not taught how to think for yourself. You're taught to regurgitate what they've told you to believe. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get off topic, but I want to hear what you have to say. Keep going.
Okay. So, when I was in, I think, second grade or so, I got into Awana, which is a thing that they had up in Michigan for our church for youth to do. And so, I was big into the Bible. My mom made me go to church and stuff. And I learned like they would give out candy, a piece of candy for every verse that you memorize. And so my family was really poor. My mom never bought me any candy. So I was the guy who goes in there and I get 20 pieces of candy a week. Everybody else is sitting here getting like one or two. But I memorized, 20 verses or so. I was really good at memorizing things. And that's probably why I did so well in school without actually having to take books home to study. And so anyway, I believed in God. I got baptized, the whole works, got saved. And then I started, my mom started lessening off church. So I didn't really go to church as much. And then, through all the stuff that I was learning at school, and I accepted it as truth because these are the people who are supposed to be teaching me what I need to know about things. And consequently, they teach you about the world and the universe. And I soon realized that what school teaches you is pretty much 100% opposite from what the Bible will teach you. And so I started believing what school is teaching because these are the people who are supposed to be teaching, And so I lost my faith. And I realized that if what school's teaching me is right, then there can't be a God. And so that really messed with my mind, a little bit. And so I would say that at that point, I learned intelligence, but I lacked wisdom. And I started, going to work and whatever. And now I lost my vision about 3 years ago, about 85% of my vision. So now I can't work, and I have all this time to think. And I guess I'm coming into some wisdom now because I'm going back to the Bible because some things in science weren't starting to make sense to me anymore. And I was like, a lot of people probably like you. I seen one flat Earth video about a year and a half ago. And I laughed and I was like, flat Earth? Ha! Yeah, right. And I was like, but you know what? Just for a good laugh, I'm going to watch it, but I will do it objectively. And so I watched it, and within 2 minutes, I've seen that there was truth there. And so then I was like, at that point, I'm like, well, maybe I'll watch this not for a good laugh. I'll watch it for some information. And so that's what really got me started on this. And over the course of that, I've come up with various thoughts. Of course, watching a lot of people on this, I've probably watched about, I don't know, somewhere in the vicinity of 250 flat Earth videos by now, and just to get an idea of what's out there. And so anyway, 2 nights ago, I decided to watch an interview with the director of The Principal movie. I haven't watched this movie. I plan to watch it actually tonight. And I was just listening to his interview with somebody, and he was talking about theory of relativity and the theory of general relativity. And so I was like, okay. And so I listened to that, and I realized, he even made mention of it, that that according to Einstein, the 2 statements are true because it's generalized, it's relative. So all motion apparently is relative. And so therefore, one could say that the Earth is stationary and the universe is spinning around it. And one can also say that the universe is stationary and the Earth is spinning within it. And according to Einstein, his theory of general relativity, that means, according to him, both statements are true. And everybody seems to be taking what Einstein says is truth, and he's actually, the reason why we can have the current scientific model of the universe that we do.
Wow. Yeah, that's how I see it. Is people take what he has said as gospel, and I've heard other quotes from astronomers that say the same thing. There's no way to prove from observation whether we're stationary and everything we see is moving, or whether everything's moving, or whether we're moving and everything else is kind of staying stationary, just from observation alone.
Yeah.
And I want to hear this subject you're getting into. First, I want to ask, what was your first, flat Earth video that you saw? Do you remember which one it was?
Give me just a second here. I'm sure I'll think of it. Oh, what's his name? Mark Sargent.
Okay.
It's one of Mark Sargent's videos.
Okay.
And it was the one where he was just going and talking about his series of flat Earth clues.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, flat Earth clues has definitely helped a lot of people. I think it was number 2 or 3. I forget which one. Talking about the bird wall, that was one where it really hit me. Where I'm like, wow, there's something here, because I've heard stories about the Van Allen belts and other things like that tied into everything I heard. So I know what you mean. And it sounds like you've seen even more flat Earth videos than I've seen.
Probably. I mean, I got a lot of time on my hands, so yeah. I've been getting into a lot of things, and now I'm also doing a full read through of the Bible, because what I've what I've realized is that a lot of people nowadays claim to be religious and believe in God, and they may very well believe in God, but they do not apparently anymore seem to believe the Word of God. And the whole thing is with that is people are taking the Word of God, but then they're also taking science, and now they're taking the Word of God and they're translating it in their mind in a way to better suit what science says.
Yeah, and I see that a lot too. I see exactly what you're talking about. And do you see it when you say science, do you see it where there is true science that is actually, testable, observable, repeatable? They're going through the scientific method, and they're leading where their truth finds, where whatever their outcome finds. And then there's this theoretical science that ignores actual real science, but the theoretical is the overarching aspect, and that squashes everything. Do you see it kind of that way, where there's almost two sciences, a real and a pseudoscience? Do you see it like that?
Yeah. And Nikola Tesla said that, scientists of the day are starting to substitute science for mathematical equations. And he said that was incredibly stupid. And I see his logic in that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And now what we have is a theory that's based on another theory, that's based on another theory, that's based on another theory, all of which isn't proven. And to me, that's just lie based upon lie, based upon lie, based upon lie, because they've been sitting around for 500 years. And if 500 years isn't enough time to prove something, to me, that means it's most likely a lie.
Wow. Yeah. Very well said.
Thank you.
And how old were you when you said that the science, when you realized that what we're taught as science is what we're taught as fact from the world? How old were you when you realized that, then the Bible must be true, and then it basically brought you to being an atheist at that point? How old were you? Do you remember?
I want to say in the vicinity of 8th grade to 9th grade, somewhere in that area.
Okay. Yeah, because that's how I see it. What we're taught from the world, it does not line up with the Bible. What we're taught as, the wisdom of the world is foolishness to God, and what we're taught, it does not compute. And so I see it the same way as you. And so we approach the Bible with these lenses and our filters and our biases, and try to squeeze the Bible into our understanding we've got from our government education. So that's how I see it. Well, I wanted to get into, what you mentioned to me last night with what you said with the theory, your relativity stance, and what you mentioned last night through your text.
Oh, okay. So what I mentioned was I got thinking about the theory of general relativity, and I got thinking about, how they say, or how Einstein suggests in his theory that both statements are true, that the universe could be rotating around the Earth and the Earth be stationary, or the Earth be rotating and the universe be stationary. And if both statements are true, and what you'll find in the movie The Principle, I guess, is that the Earth actually is in fact the center of the universe. They're proving that through the cosmic background radiation. And So I kind of thought about that for a second, and I was just kind of taking it in. And I go to bed, and just as I'm sitting down, literally as I'm just about to sit on the bed, it's like, boom, almost knocked me over. There's a finite point if the universe is in fact spinning around the Earth at which it can spin. So there's a finite distance that you can go from the Earth, at which point that's the limit, because that's the speed of light. Because in the theory of relativity, according to Einstein, the speed of light remains constant. And so therefore, I did a calculation. The universe spins around the Earth in one day. Okay? So now you have to take that, and what you can do is you basically draw a circle around that, and you think, okay, so that's the circumference, 24 hours. And then you take that, and you divide it by 3.14, and you get roughly 8. I'm just going to round up here. I don't want to really get into all the decimal points. So 8 hours, and then you divide that by 2 to get the radius. Okay, so that means that's the radius from the Earth that extends out into the universe at any point, and that is the point, what did I say, 4. So it's actually 4 light hours.
Okay.
That's speed.
Okay.
How far? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Break that down a little slower. Okay, just so.
Okay.
Just so simple-minded Montana boys can hear it, because the break. I think this breakdown is very important. What you're talking about.
Okay. Okay. So according again to Einstein's theory of relativity, light travels at a specific constant speed, and that speed is 670,616,629 miles an hour. Okay, so that means that if the universe is in fact rotating around the Earth, the outskirts, the circumference of the universe has to spin at the speed of light, no faster, because nothing can move past the speed of light. All right, and things that have mass can't even move at the speed of light, so it'd have to be further in. But we'll get to that. So when you realize that, then you have to say, okay, so the Earth has a 24-hour spin around the Earth. So you then break that down, and you can say, all right, 24 hours, that's the circumference, 24. Then you divide that by 3.14, you get roughly 8 hours. And that's going to be the diameter of the universe, 8 light hours. Okay? And then you divide that by 2 to get the radius.
Okay.
So that's 4 light hours.
Okay. I'm following you. Okay, I gotcha.
Okay, so 4 light hours is how far the universe can extend from Earth. Anything beyond 4 light hours is impossible, because it would then be spinning around the Earth at beyond the speed of light, which everybody knows, according to Einstein and all mainstream science, that's impossible.
Okay. So the gist of what you're saying is what we're getting from science, if I can say it that way, with science, because I don't view it as science, but the religious aspect of science, whatever, what people would say is modern science, cannot be true, is what you're saying.
So what I'm saying is some things can be true, but if either Einstein's theory is true, and then therefore you can only have 4 light hours within the universe, or he's wrong.
Okay. And so the size, if he is right, would that mean the size of everything we're told is different?
Yeah, that means, well, maybe not the size of everything, but relative to the Earth.
Okay.
The universe is different. That means, did you know, the solar system is said to be, I think it's something like 11.2 billion miles in radius that extends out from the sun, right? But then if the universe can only be 4 light hours from the Earth, then that means it's 1/3 the size of what they say the solar system is. So the entire universe has to fit within 1/3 of what mainstream science says of the solar system.
Okay, so the numbers are drastically, not even slightly, they're drastically different to be able to fit into that 4 light hours.
Correct? That's right. Everything. So it's pretty insane when you actually sit and think about it. And I got to thinking about the size of other things like the moon, for instance. I tested that by perspective. 2,159 miles in diameter versus 238,900 miles to it. When you test that by perspective, you can reduce everything down, right?
Yeah.
So when you reduce one thing, say the diameter, then you have to reduce the distance to it by the same amount. And when you do that, you'll find that the moon, by perspective, is roughly 1/10 to 1/12 the moon in the sky. So yeah, the size is off.
Okay, so that last part, the 1/10 to 1/12, explain that it, because I agree that the numbers are drastically different than what we're told, but as far as the 1/10 to 1/12, can you break that down for me?
Yeah, I can break that down. So what you do to test perspective, do you know the law of perspective?
No, I don't know the law of perspective. I understand perspective, but I don't know I couldn't tell you what that is.
Okay, so law of perspective says that based on your perspective, when you have something that's twice as far away, you then have to make it twice as big in order to make it the same size as that object as if it was only one time as far away.
Okay, I understand. Okay, I gotcha. I understand that.
So a way you can test that, you can take 3 cups of ramen noodles, right? And you measure it out, and you put 2 of them stacked on top of each other at 2 feet away from you, and then you put 1, but you have to put it at the halfway mark. So you got to have the middle area of the first one roughly in between the meeting point of the back 2, and then you put your camera in the center of that 1. Okay, and then so you go up and down with it, and you can see that as you go up and down with it, you'll see the bottom of the back 2, and then you bring it up, and you'll see it begin to meet the bottom of the first one. Okay, and then you go up any bit past that, you'll see the top of the back 2 start to rise over the first one. And that's proof of the law of perspective.
Okay, basically like kind of like a staircase, kind of a simplified, I guess.
Yeah, but staircase, but it would actually have to be tilted by perspective. So all of them are there, but they're all even, according to what you see. And then as you go up, you can start to see the ones behind it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm following you. So it's basically the same principle that we're told the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, but the diameter, right? But that it's 400 times further away. It's that perspective is what you're talking about.
Exactly. Okay, so that's a good example. But that being said, when you test this and it's off by a factor of 10 to 12, that means that they also got the sun off by a factor of 10 to 12. Now we're talking about 2 of the closest things in the solar system are off, according to NASA, by a factor of 10 to 12 when you test it by perspective.
Okay.
And they couldn't have tested this back when they came up with these numbers. So I got thinking, what if they just came up with these random numbers just to try and explain stuff? And no one could blame them for trying to explain it. But once you tell a certain number, you have to stick with that number.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to build off that foundation. So what you're talking about with the off by a factor of 10 to 12, it's due to perspective and the abilities that we have now to be able to measure objects that they didn't have hundreds of years ago. Is that that the average Joe right now can come up with their awesome cameras and telescopes and stuff, and we can do calculations, and by perspective, we can tell the numbers are way off. Is that the gist of
Yeah,
it?
exactly. And
Okay.
and that means other things, right? Because if they don't know the distance to nor the size of the moon, then how in the world did they go to it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I've been having good discussions on this subject with people that have bought the moon landing hook, line, and sinker. And,
Yeah,
there was a point in time. How old are you, by the way?
I'm 36.
Oh, yeah, me too. So I'm sure you remember when Apollo 13 came out with Tom Hanks, and I think we were 12 when that happened.
Yeah,
I remember that. My teacher brought that movie into school. Just thought it was so awesome, and so it just that solidifies it. Just and we'd seen countless things before that, and let alone our parents who saw the moon landing back in '69, right?
yeah,
And so we've had these things that are very, very strong, especially with all the visuals we have nowadays. And then to break free from that, it's it's very difficult for people. It's a hard pill
it
to
is.
swallow, but for me, after a while, it everything makes so much more sense when you realize just how much we're lied to. But
Yeah,
what else would you like to share on the subject? Because I think this is fascinating, and I'm glad you're discussing this because this is not my strong suit. The scientific stuff. I mean, I like I said, I can kind of understand some basic stuff, but it's not my strong suit. And I have a lot of people bring this kind of stuff up to me that, well, you're not scientific. The Bible is not a scientific book. The Bible is, because that's my aspect is more from the biblical aspect.
okay.
And I know yours is as well, but your mind is definitely you can understand both. And so, what else would you like to share on the subject?
Well, like I said, the Bible is 100% the complete opposite of science. And you can realize this because they say in the Bible, basically, the earth's flat, pretty much, okay? But science says it's a ball.
And
And they say in the Bible that the sun, the moon, and all the stars rotate around the earth. Science says the complete opposite. They say that the earth rotates within it. Okay. Science says that there is a vacuum of space beyond Earth. The Bible says there's a firmament over it, and there's three layers of it, one, two, and three. So we have the open firmament, which the birds fly through. That is the air, apparently. Okay. Then the second layer is like a semi-protective layer, I suppose. And that's the layer with, I think, with the stars and whatnot within it. And then the third layer, according to the Bible, is a layer of sapphire, like liquid sapphire. And that is the layer that sits at the throne of God. Okay, so again, everything's opposite. And when you actually stop thinking about it, I've also done some work with industrial grade vacuums. And so I know how vacuums work. And to sit there and say that there's a super weak force of gravity, which that is there within a force like a vacuum, and a vacuum, mind you, that is stronger than any that you can even begin to comprehend on Earth,
yeah,
is utterly insane.
because
Because that force of that vacuum, I would guesstimate, is probably a million times as strong as gravity. If there is even gravity, nobody knows that there is gravity.
yeah.
And Tesla said that it's gravity is 10 to the 24th, I think he said, less powerful than the force of electromagnetism.
Interesting. What did he know anyway? He wasn't a smart guy or nothing.
No, except for when they ask Einstein, how does it feel to be the strongest man alive? His reply was, I don't know, ask Nikola Tesla. Nikola
Wow.
Tesla said that Einstein was a complete idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. I know just little bits about Tesla and how he towards the end all the stuff was stolen, and was he murdered or suspicious or something like that?
Well, maybe not for the time, but they say he died alone in his hotel room.
Hmm.
I mean, come on. How suspicious is that
Yeah.
nowadays?
Yeah, nowadays. Yeah, he just happened to. And then all of his stuff was stolen, isn't that right? A lot of the
Yeah,
things
all his documents were stolen by the government or what have you at the time, and they took it. And now I guess Donald Trump's uncle owned it. So, and he said it was all nonsense. None of the stuff worked. But
Of course.
I mean, look at the Trump family; they're rich now.
Yeah.
So something had to work, probably.
Yep.
Um,
Wow.
but anyway, yeah. So like I said, the whole universe apparently is based on what Einstein's theories were, and he needed, like, the government and the scientists at the time needed Einstein to have these theories. Like, they needed the theories to prove what they were trying to say. Like,
Yeah.
saying that the Earth rotates and stuff like that. Okay, and there's so many things about the solar system right now that you can think of, like the Earth. It's wobble, right? But according to Newton's law, a body of motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays at rest. So even if it was spinning, okay, that's one motion. But if it wobbles, why doesn't it rotate all the way around and keep rotating with that wobble? It can't just wobble a little bit, stop, okay, and then 6 months later wobble back the other way, stop. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much, but like you said, is the theory built on a theory built on a theory, which is, how I certainly see it as like a lie built on a lie built on a lie, is that they have to keep going. They can't say that, oh, this is wrong, because then it would disprove or put doubt on so many other things. And that's certainly how I see it. And I see so many times, it's just like they say a couple days ago that they did some scientific tests on the moon rock or whatever, and they found that, oh, this moon rock actually came from the Earth. And instead of going, yeah, because we've never been to the moon and that rock was from the Earth, like literally it never went up into what people think is space. Instead of that, they go, no, so that means that somehow there happened to have some piece of the Earth happen to be on the moon. And then we happen to pick up this piece. So it's like, what? You got to be that dumb to be that smart, or that smart to be that dumb to just buy this kind of nonsense, hook, line, and sinker. But anyway, but we're brought up to this. And so it is a hard pill to swallow. But
and yeah, on that note, like, a lot of people really freak out when you bring this stuff up. And yeah, if you can bring something up, it's not just that you bring it up. So when you first bring it up, they're going to think you're crazy, right? That's their natural reaction. You're crazy. But they think you're crazy, and everybody thought Einstein was crazy or Nikola Tesla was crazy because they have a higher level of thinking. And to them, when you think things that they can't themselves comprehend, you're crazy. Okay? And then, but when you can actually prove to them on their level that what you're saying is true, then they will get mad because it challenges their way of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Because they'd have to admit that they were wrong. And humility is a hard thing to find sometimes, for sure, especially in the scientific world. I mean, how many doctors, for instance, do you know that they go, oh, I guess I was wrong about this stuff, because they have so much invested, hundreds of thousands of dollars into schooling, years and years of schooling, and just to go, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, this mom that has done years of research on vaccines or whatever the subject is knows more than I do about this. And how many doctors will admit that? It's very rare. And that's just one little thing.
Yeah, and that's something I actually went through. Okay, I went through 2 years of going to doctors when my eyes started going bad, and it was how doctors get upset when you try and explain something to them.
Oh yeah.
And their arrogance get in the way, and they're like, oh, this guy thinks he's smarter than me. He's not a doctor. He didn't research this. I spent 2 years researching my own eyes and every possibility that could have happened to him. Okay, and I go to the doctor and I'm well informed and I'm trying to explain to them what I think happened. And they say, oh no, that's impossible. But one guy who went to Yale said, a doctor actually who specialized in eyes, went to Yale, he said what I was saying was possible. And so I was trying to get him to at least look that up. And they all got upset and they won't even listen to it. Like, they just get on their computer and they'd be looking up what they think it is. And if you're going off, having a look at the computer, I've already done that. I've been through it all. I looked at it all.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty insane. And that seems to be the way of the world now. The higher the degree, the more arrogant they are, and therefore the less that you're going to be able to change their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to a smaller scale, I mean, we're all of us pretty much just like that. from the time we graduate high school, we've been indoctrinated with so much knowledge that breaking us of that and understanding, like you're talking about the vacuums and gravity, and just that is probably more on the basic side of things, that stuff is not true, at least not what we've been told anyway. And like you said, you spent 2 years looking into why your eyes, 85, you lost 85% of your vision. So you're very dedicated. You're more dedicated to yourself getting better than they are dedicated to helping you get better. And so you have all this stuff invested, and then they don't even want to take you serious. And the sad thing is, it's much more common to have this happen than, a doctor to say, wow, you've done more research on this subject than me. Tell me what you've learned, so I can try to help you. It's like you would think that they would do that. And once in a while, I saw a video a while back, a doctor admitting that he's not vaccinating people. He's losing out on, I forget, $1 million or $2 million a year that he would have made off vaccines. And then he said that these moms come to me and they know way more than I do on the subject. And, and he said it was hard for him to, humble himself to admit that these people know more than I do on the subject. And this reminds me, I said this on an episode, I don't know which episode it was, but in my book, page 239, it says, so you think you're smarter than Einstein, and ... because I hear this stuff all the time. If I had $1 for every time that someone has said something like that to me, why, no, I do not consider myself to have a higher IQ than Einstein. Intelligence has nothing to do with the subject at hand. I view Einstein as a skilled framer building on an untrue foundation people like Copernicus, Kepler, and Galileo poured. Think about the other experts we see on TV almost every day of our lives. Are they smarter than me? Who cares? That is not the point. I view them all as skilled tradesmen trimming away at their drywall to make it fit the clustered framework of a house built on a slowly sinking and untrue foundation. And that's how I see it. Like you talk about theory built on theory built on theory. And, do we realize that or not? And I get so many objections every single day on this subject. I have so many people that get very upset at what I say. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to get upset with what you're saying. But can we humble ourselves and go, maybe there's something to that? Just like you said about your first Mark Sargent video, with your flat earth clues. Can we humble ourselves and go, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not seeing this right. I don't have all the answers. Maybe there's something to this. And I find that most people have a very hard time with that, because it comes with this sense of guilt or this sense of shame that maybe I'm wrong, and we just got to, admit that, well, maybe I don't understand this right. There's a lot of things I know that I have wrong, but I don't know that I have wrong. Like right now, I know there's some understandings I have that are wrong. I just don't know what they are. So.
Yeah. And I went through that as well. I got thinking, maybe I'm wrong. And then I tried to prove myself wrong. I can't prove myself wrong on the moon thing because I made so many people upset at me. And I was trying to explain it to them, and finally, just because of the sheer anger that comes out of that, I was like, and they want to talk about it. Like they find it interesting and they want to talk about it, but then when they can't prove you wrong, they get upset about it. And so finally, I just come to the point where I'm like, okay, well, I tell you what, first person to prove me wrong on that, I'll give you $100 bill. You ain't got to take what I'm saying, do it yourself. Go out there and figure this stuff out yourself, learn the math, learn the science, and then come tell me that I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's funny that people like you and me have, just tons of time invested into researching these subjects. But then you have people that haven't done a single ounce of research, just whatever they've been told growing up. And then they'll be your hardest critics, but yet they won't do their own research. A lot of people, I don't think, want to start to do research, because then what if they find out that they're wrong, and what all would come from that? And have you looked into... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think they get scared of what they might learn, because then it's going to flip their whole world view, whole universe view, whole spiritual view. And I actually had a friend, my best friend, I told him the thing about the moon, and he went and showed his wife, and his wife's like, oh, he's crazy, he's wrong. And so therefore my best friend's like, oh, you're crazy, you're wrong. He takes his wife's word on everything. And I said, the only reason you say that is because she says it. But what does she say about, about it? What's her proof that I'm wrong? So I go and ask her, I said, well, why am I wrong? And she's like, oh, you're just wrong. I'm not going to get into it. Well, you're not going to get into it because you can't prove me wrong, but yet you think I'm wrong, and you can't prove it. It's a huge redundant circle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard this saying before that the greatest fear of man is the fear of change. And so what would come from what you're talking about is change, and so
Yes.
a lot of people are very, very stubborn. I'm guilty as anybody on this stuff, but it is, it's, to me, it's so refreshing to be humble and just to go, yep, I'm probably wrong on something, where am I missing this? And just being willing to change and being willing to accept a different point of view,
Right.
And
And I think change is coming. Okay. Now you look at the Bible and it says, before the Lord comes to get all his people, there's going to be a huge awakening. Therefore, a lot more people awakening, meaning, in my opinion anyway, that there's going to be a lot of people who come back to God. Okay. Like a lot of people, because of what science has taught them, are going away from God. I think that's the leading cause of atheism and whatever other kind of religion there is because of this whole model. And yet now, science itself is proving it wrong. They're proving that the Earth is in fact the center of the universe, and it is a very special point if it's the center of the universe, and therefore somebody had to put it there.
mm-hmm.
And not only that, but if the Earth is the center of the universe, in my opinion, I think that it has to stay still.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not the intersection there of the cosmic radiation doesn't follow it around the sun. It can't possibly do that. It has to be stationary.
Well, it's not like the Bible says the earth is not moving. Oh, wait, yeah, it does.
Yes, it does. I think it's 29 times it says fixed and immovable.
Yeah, yeah. Cannot move. Cannot be moved.
Yeah.
You just over and over, yeah. Exactly.
So I think that science itself now, because of the cosmic background radiation, has to start all over. And I think that's going to be probably where the Great Awakening is going to happen. A lot of people are waking up to the flat Earth stuff and other things. And I think we're in the time of that Great Awakening. Maybe some of my stuff might help people get there. That's what I'm hoping for. And so that's why I spend so much time on it, because I realized how wrong I've been over the last, ever since I was in high school. So trying to get back to God, get closer, you know what I'm saying? At one point I was teaching my wife that there can't be a God, and now I've gone back on that and I'm teaching her, yes, there is a God.
Wow.
And please forgive me for, trying to tell you that there wasn't. And, that sort of thing. So that stuff's really hard to do on people. And if they go back and, they have to now tell their families, because they've been teaching their families, like you obviously teach your families what you believe on this subject.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go back to God and now you have to all of a sudden explain that to your family, they're going to be looking at, well, why'd you lead me astray? They don't want to see that.
Yeah.
But, you got to do it. You got to make it right.
Absolutely.
And God actually tells two things in the Bible of real big importance to me. He says, either you believe the word of God and all of it, or you don't. And that's how you get to heaven. You do, or you don't. Okay? And then he also says, believe the word of God and all of it over science. Now, why would he put that in there? Obviously, he knew something about what science was going to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I think like I said, I probably repeat myself, but the true science versus this man-made wisdom, not man-made wisdom, man-made nonsense. And I think it's, I was just reading this the other day, 1 Corinthians 2:14, because I think this is some of the stuff we're seeing today. But the people who aren't spiritual can't receive these truths from God's Spirit. It all sounds foolish to them, and they can't understand it. For only those who are spiritual can understand what the Spirit means. But there's also that the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God. I mean, there's so much where, where the world, and basically how I see it is whatever the world accepts and embraces, you can bet is against God and what God wants for us. And that's how I see it. And so to me, as this goes on, like you talk about this big great awakening, and that's how I see it. I see so many people are waking up to this, and they're waking up to the lies of this world. And then you also have this other group that is the opposite. They're becoming more and more apathetic. They're becoming more and more just, yeah, whatever, who cares, and they just, yeah, they want to murder babies in the womb up till the day they're born. Sure, who cares, whatever. And then you have other people that are just waking up to the nightmares of this world and the lies of this world. And that's how I see it. Yeah, there's a huge awakening for sure. And then there's also like a falling asleep almost is how I see it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It really is a falling asleep. You'll see people who day to day, they get out of bed and they just mope around all day and they don't really do much. And to me, that's falling asleep. You might as well be sleeping if you're not going to do anything. And everything we eat, everything we drink drains our energy unless you actually, go all natural on everything. Drink just water, soda. I've had issues with soda. Like my whole life, I have never drinking more than like a cup a day at maximum of soda. And then recently, like because I'm home a lot more, I guess, or something, and the water I have at home isn't very good. They put too much bleach in it. So I drink more soda, and I notice that the more soda I drink, the more lazy I get. And so now I'm like, okay, I'm done with soda. Never drinking it again. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So people need to get these things out of their life. And I think that, TV programming for sure clouds mind. And all these things that you see with TV, the internet, YouTube, and what kids watch on there really messes with their mind. It makes them all very, very hard to concentrate on things. Like they all have ADD now. It's insane. Even my own kids, like I let them watch YouTube, but and they really, it seems to make them go kind of crazy a little bit. So I've been stepping back off it a little bit, and they've been playing with their toys more. And now that they've been playing with their toys more and not watching YouTube, they're not so ADD ridden.
Yeah, it's okay. They have, doctors have pills for that.
Oh yeah, right. Like I really want that.
Oh man,
it might cure their ADD, but then it might kill them too.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, I saw something the other day about a huge statistic about kids under 6 taking all kinds of prescriptions and stuff. It's horrific. It's like, yeah, we feed our kids these foods, we put them in front of the TV, and we don't discipline them like we should. And wow, why are they acting that way? It's okay. Let's go to the doctor. We'll give them a pill to calm them down. It just, anyway, yeah, having kids definitely puts a big perspective on things for me. I'm sure it does for you as well.
Oh yeah, I'm scared to death now because my oldest boy who lives with me is he's going to go to school next year. And so I've been calling the schools and I'm like, hey, what are you planning on teaching my kid? Because I don't want his mental health screwed up. Okay, I've seen what happens. And it's really bad right now for anybody who's in 8th grade plus. It is so bad because they're teaching the whole trans agenda. You can identify as whatever you want, and I had a niece, and she went to a school where they pushed the trans agenda, and not only that, they mixed middle school. She was in 8th grade, and they mixed it with high school, which is really bizarre to me because you don't really want those two age groups mixing with each other, in my opinion, in a social setting like that every day, because especially if the older ones are learning things in school that aren't right, like the whole trans agenda. And don't get me wrong, if you want to do that when you're an adult, that's an adult decision to me. You want to do it when you're an adult, go do it. But you do not teach that to my kid. If I want my kid to think something like that, I'll teach it to him myself. Yeah. So I called the school and I was like, what are you planning on teaching them? Do you teach the trans agenda there? She's like, oh no, nobody identifies as the other sex yet at this age. And this was kindergarten and, K2, I think they call it now. And so it's like, so the counselor there said that. And I said, well, that means maybe they're not identifying it as something else yet, but they're clearly putting it in their heads because she said they're not identifying as anything else yet. So you really got to take what people say and examine that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, especially when it comes to your kids. And I said, if my kid comes home and tells me he so much as identifies as a frog, I will be up that school and raising hell within the hour.
Oh man, you're telling me that it's wrong to try to trick kids into thinking they're a different gender than they really are? You think that's wrong?
I think that's so wrong. And what it does is it makes them think that everything you're telling them is true, but maybe they think that their whole life when they get to school, and then everything that teachers are telling them is true. But the two kind of clash, and so they don't know what to make of it. And now they don't know what to think anymore, and they can't think for themselves. And now they have, oh, you can be a boy if you want. If you're a girl, it's cool. We'll call you Steve, and then they come home, and this is what happens though. And I think this is why they're pushing it so hard. It makes the kids literally want to kill themselves.
Wow.
My niece wants to kill herself all the time. One kid in their school did commit suicide. And I would have to venture to say that at least half of them are mentally unstable in the way that they would consider suicide.
Wow. Wow.
And that's why it's a really big issue to me, and that's why it's not going to happen to my kids.
Yeah. How old's your niece, by the way? I'm just curious.
She is now 13. When it all happened was last year, so she was 12.
12. And a friend of hers or a schoolmate killed himself, right? And she's talked about. And to me, I say this all the time, and I'm not going to stop saying it, is that the world is out to corrupt our kids and destroy our kids. It's all about our kids, and because I forget the exact quote that Hitler said. Like, I don't care about you, I have your kids, and just the minds of your kids, and just to corrupt our kids, to confuse them, to basically destroy God's way, that He would have them be, and His order of things. And who would have ever thought that the whole tranny agenda would be the new frontier of civil rights, and and it's not, like you said, if somebody wants to be an adult and they think that they can go in and have some surgery and turn themselves into a woman and actually think they're a woman, if they're an adult and they want to do something like that, whatever, it's their right, whatever. But don't push this crap on our kids, because it is absolutely wicked, evil, wrong. It is not natural. It is, and we're planting these seeds into our kid. Not me or you, but people are planting these seeds into our kids that it is okay, that it is actually a thing. You can decide. It used to be, you can decide whether you're gay or not. Now it's, you can decide your gender. Little Billy, you can actually decide, and it is appalling to me. It is complete child abuse. This is absolutely child abuse. But
I would agree with that. 100%.
Yeah. And how the hell can people look at this and not think it's child abuse? I mean, I see this all the time over here. I see, if you want to use this un-PC term, where they're Pats, right? Where a Pat, you don't know if it's a man or woman, named Pat. Every day, I'm in Seattle, so I see it pretty regularly around here, where it's like, is that a dude or a chick? I can't tell the difference. And they're trying to do this to our kids, where they can't identify, and it is just destroying kids. And it, as a parent, and I see this, and I'm sure you would agree that when I see this happening, I feel so much more empathy than I ever did before having kids. And I see this, and it's not okay. And it's not that I want to be out there vocal about this kind of stuff, but I have to be. I have to be talking about this kind of stuff, because the opposite side, that is completely immoral and wants to destroy our kids, are very vocal, and we need to be vocal as well.
Oh yeah, and I plan to, start petitioning the State Board of Education about these things, as well as evolution. That's another thing. 100% opposite of the Bible, evolution. Okay, they say that we evolved from chimpanzees. The Bible says we were created by God. Now, you can sit there and examine this. Okay, and what they don't teach you in school is that humans have 23 sets of chromosomes and chimpanzees has 24. as does everything else on this earth that's alive. Plants, trees, grass, everything. Chimpanzees, apes, monkeys, horses, 24. So that suggests, beyond any doubt, that is evidence of genetic manipulation. Now, if you go way back then, humans didn't have that technology. Therefore, something of higher intelligence must have done it. And when you try and explain that to the school board, they get mad. I did that. I called the State Board of Education actually yesterday on that subject, and they got really upset at me. And they were like, well, I think hundreds and if not thousands of scientists would disagree with you. And I was like, well, maybe they're just not as smart. You know,
I love
on
it.
that subject.
Yeah. No, good for you, man. I mean, I wish more and more people would do that. I'm sure there's lots of people that are out there doing this, but the opposite side is very vocal, and we need to be just as vocal or more.
Yeah.
And
what it really comes down to, you could sit here and talk about this to you blue in the face on YouTube or what have you, and yeah, it's going to make people start to think about this, but that's going to put the idea out there, and that's good. That's what we need to do. We need to get the ideas out there that the stuff's wrong. We're being taught lies 24/7, and once people start to realize that, then you can move that into the court system and begin starting lawsuits to change the curriculum.
wow.
And you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people will say, well, why? What's the point? Why would you want to do this? What is the grand scheme? And to me, it's just like what you talked about, where all of this religion of science that we're taught as fact, it brings us away from God, and it brings this atheistic mindset, and it brings eternal destruction is what it ultimately brings, if we continue to follow down that path. And thank God that you came to the point where, you realized how wrong the lies of this world are, and you came back to God. And the great thing too is, like you said, you brought your wife along with you. She got to see that. And I think our wives, are in such a unique position, and through us being wrong from, whenever it happens, but then us being humble enough to say, oh, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I was in the wrong, explaining those kinds of things. I know from experience when I do that kind of stuff with my wife, that she gains more and more respect for me and views me more and more as the leader. And, whereas digging in your heels and going, no, I wasn't wrong or whatever, it doesn't help anybody. And so that's a great example of you, and was that just in the last few years that you've really come back to God? Was this the subject that really did it for you?
Yeah, this was the subject. I realized because of my study of the Bible that, the earth and universe is a self-contained system. And at no point does the Bible ever mention anything about the earth or universe in the sense of what modern day science says it is. And so then I got thinking, well, which one can be right? And the whole flat earth thing really helped out a lot. And, I can't necessarily prove that it's flat, but if God says it is, that's good enough for me. Mm-hmm. And, and the book of Enoch was taken out of the Bible. And I don't know have you read the book of Enoch yet?
I've maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I should say I skimmed, so I don't have a lot of experience with it.
Okay. I can tell you why they took it out. It's because it gives a very, very detailed explanation of the Earth, how it looks, and the universe, and how everything within it works. And that's my next project. After I try and get this, my theory published, that I just came up with, my next project is to go through the book of Enoch again. And I'm going to take what he says about the workings of the sun, moon, and the stars, because he says they go through gates around the earth, from east to west and whatnot. It goes through the gates and then it goes back. And so I'm going to actually make a model of this, draw it out, see if I can make sense of it, and then see if I can prove that it's a working model.
Yeah.
Because if God and the angels told him that's how it works, then it should work.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And I know the Book of Enoch it interests me. And I'm assuming you have my book, or do you not?
I do not, but I am going to get it for sure and
Okay.
give it a read.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Give me your address. I'll send you a copy, actually. But
Oh, okay.
and so it's strictly, what does the Bible say? And I actually early on I considered studying Enoch and incorporating the two, but to me it's like it needed to be a what does the Bible say 101. Stick with just the 66 books. Just what does the basic Bible say? But then part two down the road I could incorporate the Book of Enoch, things like that. I don't have the study into it to do it at the moment or back then even. But I've heard
Yeah.
lots of things about the Book of Enoch. I have nothing negative to say for sure. It's just not really my strong suit, I should say.
Right.
But
Well,
there are your points that you talk about, like the six gates and things like that, are very interesting. And there's just like you say, there things like that I could see incorporating. Well, how does it fit into what the Bible says? And the Book of Enoch sure seems to be legit, and if it is legit, which it seems like it should fit hand in glove with the Bible.
yeah. And just one point about that. In the Bible itself, Jesus makes reference to the Book of Enoch, and if he makes reference to it, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, it's quoted in Jude, if I remember right, and he referenced it. And it's like you go throughout the Bible, it's like, isn't this written in the book of this? Isn't this written in the book of that? And so it's like, well, what about that book, or what about that book that I haven't heard of, or like I think it talks about the Book of Jasher at one point, and
Yeah,
so on and so
it
forth.
does.
If we choose to keep the understanding of what science in quotes tells us, we have to twist our understanding of the Bible to fit what we've chosen to believe.
But there's so much more science that is coming out now, okay? Have you heard of sonoluminescence?
Oh, it sounds familiar.
It's where you have water, and then you shoot sound waves through it, and it creates light. And
Oh, okay.
it forms bubbles. Bubbles start popping out, right? And then in the bubbles, boom, out comes this light, and they burn at millions of degrees. Now
Wow.
that, to me, sounds an awful lot like if you take, for instance, what the Bible says that the firmament separates the waters below from the waters above. That means that up there's water, and it would make more sense that with this cosmic background radiation, or whatever seems to be radiating throughout the universe, could be causing sonoluminescence, and that makes a lot more sense to me than stars being trillions of miles away. And not only that, but when you look at stars through a high zoom telescope or camera or what have you, you will notice that on all of them, the outside border of the star is brighter than what's on the inside. But not only that, it has a pattern which seems to me to look like a frequency pattern. If you were to put like on the table with salt,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yep.
put so it looks like that. And when you realize that, it means that the edges on a sphere would have to be further away for one, right? Or it's a pattern like the sonoluminescence with frequencies. And not only that, but when you realize that what they're saying is absolutely crazy, that space is a vacuum, how in the world can you have a flame, because flames are what causes a burn, right? In a vacuum, which is impossible because you can't, because there's no oxygen there to burn. If it's only hydrogen, there's no oxygen, and therefore it can't burn. And not only that, but the vacuum itself would pull it apart before it even had a chance to burn, for one. And for two, even if it was burning, it would still pull it all apart.
Wow.
It can't be there.
Because
So,
the subject of a vacuum I find very interesting, because as far as I understand, there's nothing man-made that can produce 100% vacuum. Is that correct? There is no.
that's correct. I think the closest they came was 96% at the NASA thing.
Okay.
And it's interesting point about that is they say they have all these seals, on these things that they put up there. Well, having worked with industrial grade vacuums, which are nowhere near as good as a perfect vacuum, mine was 25 HG. I'm not sure what that translates into torr, but we had these seals on it, and it was a a hydraulic plunger seal that would open it up and close it. And they had some of the best seals in the world there for that. And it would rip it apart like daily. So
Wow.
we don't have seals that can work in a perfect vacuum.
Yeah, if they can't handle that. And yet, back when they landed on the moon in 69, they had suits that could handle this massive vacuum of space. I don't know if they'd say on the moon, is it still 100% vacuum? Well, I guess it would be if they didn't have any kind of atmosphere, as far as what we're told, right? So it'd have to be 100%. So they're landing on the moon in the late 1960s with suits that have never been tested in 100% vacuum, and yet they show them all screwing around, like pretending to play golf and driving around in this cart and like no big deal, in suits that were completely untested. There's nothing on Earth that can test these things.
Yeah.
And then
do you know what happens?
Well, sorry, let me finish this before I forget. Like,
okay.
Somebody mentioned this recently. I hadn't thought of this before. And let's say, if you blow up a little rubber, like a nylon kind of glove, like a doctor's glove, if you just blow that up and hold it, and just, obviously that's the force of air pushing outward. But the vacuum, 100% vacuum would do the same kind of thing. It'd be pulling it outward in all directions, right? So if these people have suits, and the vacuum of space is pulling 100% vacuum, it's going to expand the suit as far as possible before, while the material's holding it. And assuming it all still holds together, it'd be like, what's SpongeBob SquarePants' friend, the big starfish dude, whatever.
Patrick.
Okay, Patrick. He'd be like out like this. The people in suits on 100% vacuum, they are literally, if they try to bend their arms, it would be making the space inside the suit smaller. Therefore, it'd be pulling against this 100% pure vacuum. So every time, to me, it's like if this whole vacuum thing was real, people in spacesuits would be like stuck like this, arms out, not able to move or do anything. Is that how you would see that?
I see it going beyond that. Not only would it be like that at first,
it'd rip them apart, right?
Millisecond.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like, we're talking millisecond, okay? And put that balloon inside of a vacuum. What happens? Pop.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think's gonna happen to a suit in space? Pop.
Yeah.
If it's pressurized, anything pressurized. Have you looked at the lunar lander? I mean, they didn't, when it landed and they got out, it didn't go like it was releasing anything. And even if it did, that would surely, based on my observations from working with industrial vacuums, that would have knocked that thing down and made it go all over the place. And not only that, when you open a door from something that's vacuum sealed, it tends to go. And if it was pressurized and all the pressure hadn't gotten out, and it takes a while sometimes for stuff to get out like that, especially through any kind of sealant type thing. So when the door would have opened there, it wouldn't have been like they made it, like going like, no, it would have been boom. Okay, it would have knocked it over too. It's really quite comical.
Yeah. But go ahead and make a post on this subject, and you'll have somebody that has done no research or thought about it objectively will gladly tell you how you're completely wrong, or that you're completely wrong. Not how, but just that you are.
And they won't even be able to tell me how.
Yeah.
And if they do, like, their idea probably wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, it would be, well, that means that Einstein's wrong and scientists are wrong, and therefore you're wrong, because they hold, to me, it's like they hold all these people up. Anybody wearing a white robe, is almost like the word of God to them. Like, if they're wearing a white robe, they're a lower G God, and, their word is gospel. As long as they say science says. My friend Nate Wolf, he says that it's like the game Simon Says. So every time they say Simon says, touch your head. Simon says this and that. And so you have to do it. So it's like science says. As soon as science says that this, science says that, it is all fact. There is no rebutting that. But is there? And I believe there absolutely is, for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's not real science. It's pseudoscience. It's the religion of science. It's theoretical science. It's built on lies, and so on and so forth. But, we better call it good for this. I'd love to have you on again to have some chit-chatting. Give me your address after this. Don't hang up. I'll after this broadcast, and I'll get your address, send you a copy, and I'm sure I'll have you on again.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Erik, thanks so much for coming on. And where can people, if people have questions or want to get a hold of you, do you have a way to get a hold of you?
Right now I'm just on Facebook. I will be on YouTube. They can send stuff to my email or Facebook. So Facebook is Erik Shimandle, and I think I'm probably the only Erik Shimandle on there, to be honest.
Can you spell that for him?
Yeah, it's ERIK space SHIMANDLE. And so then my email is blindgamingnetwork@hotmail.com.
Okay. And as far as your vision goes, is it stable now at 85% loss?
Yeah, it's stable. And the thing about that is I went and seen all these specialists, and had any of them listened to me at the beginning, I may still very well have my vision. None of them wanted to listen to me, and I went through 2 years of watching my vision deteriorate, and all it took was a 3-minute test to prove what I said was happening was going on, and they prescribed me some eye drops, and boom, all of a sudden my vision loss has ceased to keep going.
Wow. Well, we'll be praying for your vision to be restored. Put it that way. What man can't do, God can certainly do. So.
Well, it would be nice. I hope he does, but I've learned that it's a good thing, because now I have all this time to think. I have all the time to spend with my family, and at this point, I don't think that I would want to return to work.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your insight. I really appreciate that. Definitely, I love the thought process you have is slightly different than mine, and I appreciate you coming on. So, all right, Erik. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Chad. Appreciate it.
This has been episode 15 of Coffee with Chad, and what would Coffee with Chad be without having
Funny Dad Joke Time?
Misspell one word, and the whole text is urine. That's right, folks. Urined. Because ruined and urined use the same letters. All right. Yes, it's dumb, but it's funny. All right. Thank you all so much for coming on. With that, we're going to have our outro. See you next time. Coffee with Chad, episode 16. Coming up. Cheers.